Hey, welcome on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla to give you the latest in the sporting world. Mitch is going to be back with you for the end of this week as we have a number of games to talk about, a number of games to get into this weekend, and a number of stories to address here on the podcast.
Mitch, happy Cinco de Mayo, my friend, and to anybody out there watching or listening, happy Cinco de Mayo. And yes, we certainly have some games to talk about, some big games that happen, and some shuffling of the schedules that is going to have to take place to make league races very interesting here down the stretch.
And before we get to that, we want to remind you guys, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. We also want to tell you guys we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, courtesy of Spotify for podcasters. You can also find us on our website, BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our latest articles and videos and the like there. You can also go to on Facebook and Instagram at Big Time Sports Ohio, or on Twitter at BTS Ohio, or on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla. I mean, Mitch, we start off now where baseball and softball seasons are really, getting down to the latter stages of their campaigns, and a number of baseball matchups happening here in the last couple of days. We've gotten past some of the rainouts here over the last few days, and now it looks like we're getting the sun breaking out again. A number of ones over the last couple of days, including some games last night between the likes of Green versus Perry. We also had a crossover matchup between Dover and I believe North Canton Hoover. Kind of take me through some of those games and other matchups that we might be seeing here, or might have seen here in the last few days.
Well, Mitch, to get things started, I want to talk about a team we touched on last week, and that was the Alliance Aviators, who clinched at least a share of the EBC title and just needed one more win to try to clinch it themselves on an outright championship bid. Marlington, though, has thrown a wrench into the mix. Last night, Marlington defeated Alliance 6-3 behind a complete game from Drew Simmons, who gave up 3 runs, all unearned. Caden Bates homered and scored twice for the Marlington Dukes, who then, with the win, Marlington is also alive, but they also keep West Branch and Carrollton alive. And there is a potential way, there is a 4-way tie for the EBC title, assuming teams win out. However, Alliance and Marlington meet again tonight, both the final league game for those schools of the regular season taking place tonight at Marlington. So Alliance could solidify it and knock Marlington out. Marlington could really put themselves right back into the mix of things and also keep West Branch and Carrollton alive for maybe a 4-way tie in the EBC. So that's a very interesting race we have over there. When we talk about some of the other teams, Carrollton, they stayed alive 11-5 over Minerva last night. West Branch shut out Salem 5-0. Canton South defeated Fairless 7-0. And then the Federal League, Mitch, is starting to get very, very competitive and tight. Really a 2-team race after what Jackson did this week, sweeping the Canton McKinley Bulldogs on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, they defeated McKinley 10-6 at Thurman Munson Memorial Stadium. And then last night at Jackson, the Polar Bears with a 9-0 win behind a complete game shutout effort from junior right-handed pitcher Jake Sweetnich. Mitch, he gave up 3 hits, no walks, just a dominating performance in what was the junior's first home start of the season. He has been the day 2 starter for Jackson for a majority of the season in league play. And this was the first time Jackson went on the road for game 1 and then played game 2 at home. And so I think it's safe to say Jake Sweetnich enjoyed the home cooking last night. The offense got him 2 in the first, 3 in the third, 5-0 there. And then Jackson ended up to tack on 4 more throughout the rest of the contest in a 9-0 win. You also had Green taking on Perry. Now, really, Mitch, it's a 2-team race in the Federal League after all this, but Green's still trying to pick up some impressive wins. Green shut out Perry in a complete game no-hitter from left-handed pitcher Luke Ickes on Wednesday night. That game was actually played over at the second field at Thurman Munson Memorial Stadium because Perry's field was not able to get done up in time to play after all the rain we had here. So Ickes throws a no-hitter against Perry in a phenomenal effort from the lefty. And then Green last night defeats Perry 5-2 at Green High School. So Green getting another Federal League sweep here after almost a little bit of a rocky start in league play, but they picked up some big wins here down the stretch. And now they're going to be looking to play spoiler next week when they take on Jackson. And that is what Glen Oak needs. Glen Oak and Lake were scheduled to play 2 games this week, Mitch. Glen Oak is the other team in the running for the Federal League title with Jackson with just 2 league losses. Jackson and Glen Oak have 1 game to make up against each other, though, and that's why this gets interesting. Glen Oak had 2 games this week against Lake before entering their bye week next week. Both games, though, Mitch, got postponed. So now it might not only be Jackson next week, who has 3 Federal League games, Tuesday, Wednesday against Green. It could possibly be Glen Oak as well, assuming they find time to play Lake in there, depending on what Lake's schedule is next week. I don't have Lake's schedule in front of me, but Jackson and Glen Oak are on a collision course right now, Mitch. If they both win out to where next Saturday, May 13th, 11 a.m. at Glen Oak, that game will decide the Federal League Championship. It could either be an outright bid for Jackson, or it could be a co-champion this year in the Federal League between Jackson and Glen Oak. That could get very interesting, assuming both Jackson and Glen Oak handle their business in their last 2 league games before that rematch, all the way from week 2 of the high school baseball season. So a lot has changed for Jackson and Glen Oak since the first time they matched up. It'll be very interesting because you look at Jackson, 4 games in 5 nights next week, Green twice, Walsh Jesuit at Walsh Jesuit on Friday night, and then at Glen Oak on Saturday morning. The other wrench to throw into this mix, Mitch, the tournament draw is this weekend for baseball here in the state of Ohio. They will not play next week in the tournament, but the following week they will. If Glen Oak is unable to get some of these games in, there's a chance they might have to really decide who they want to throw when in their first round playoff matchup in the sectionals, and also in league play when they have to take on Lake again. So that is something we're going to have to keep a very close eye on as things are really getting tight here in the Federal League.
No doubt. And you mentioned Lake's schedule. I actually have it pulled up here myself. This coming Friday, Lake will take on 11-4 Louisville in a road matchup over in Louisville. And then Saturday is interesting because they have a doubleheader, but it's against 2 different squads. At 11:30, they're scheduled to take on Norton in a non-conference affair. Then at 5 o'clock, they're set to play Marlington. On Monday, we have them take on Worcester at home. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, they'll have back-to-back games, play against Hoover. And then on Thursday, they'll take on Glen Oak at home. So speaking of the Vikings, I want to get to some of the matchups we have from Tuscarawas County from this past recent couple of days. The Vikings were able to beat Dover in a home matchup by a score of 7-1, as it was Mason Billy who allowed 4 hits and 0 runs over 5 innings of work to capture the victory. Max Kiko drove in a pair of runs for Hoover, while Mason Ashby and Drew Stangelo each added an RBI. Stangelo and Tyler Evans wrapped 2 hits in the victory off of Colin Bruno, who allowed 8 hits and 7 runs, 1 earned, as Dover had to suffer 4 fielding errors throughout the game. As far as other matchups go, on Thursday, Strasburg was able to beat Newcomerstown in a walk-off outing. I believe that score was 7-6, excuse me, as Matthew Cox ripped an RBI single in the bottom of the 7th inning. Mason Wagner pitched a complete game for the Tigers, overcoming a couple of errors from Strasburg to allow 3 earned runs while totaling 7 strikeouts. As the Tigers improved to 11-9, they would improve to 12-9 with a 6-0 victory on Friday against the Trojans as well. So we also had that. We also had a hit list performance by 2 pitchers for Canton South, as AJ Pearson and Jimmy Smith combined for a no-hitter, 7-0 against Fairless on Thursday. Pearson went 6 innings, struck out 12 Falcons batters while only allowing 4 walks for the game. Smith went 1-2-3 in the last inning to secure the tandem no. Pearson also had 2 hits, including a double for the Wildcats. A couple of other hitters in there as well. Camden Brooks, Poochie Snyder among them, going 2 for 4 each. And Andy Gill took the loss to the Falcons, who had 5 fielding errors on the game. We also had Samuel Zurcher tossing a 2-hit shutout for Indian Valley on Friday, as the Braves solidified their spot in the IVC South by winning against Claymont 9-0 in a road matchup. The Braves are now 15-3, 8-1 in IVC South play. Zurcher struck out 9 in the victory. The Braves had a 5-run 4th inning with Rafe Bonifay, Brogan Bircher, and Cale Kochman each driving in runs for IV. And on Friday, Carrollton was able to hold off Minerva in an EBC victory 11-5 as the Warriors continue their dominance in the conference. The Warriors jumped out to a 4-0 lead before Minerva scored 3 runs of their own in the 4th. Carrollton added 3 more runs in the top of the 5th, and the Lions cut the lead to 7-5 after 5. And then the Warriors added 4 runs in the 6th inning to pull away with the victory. There were 4 hitters for Carrollton in that night that had 2 or more hits: Landon James, Jimmy Little, Caden Riniger, and Caden Smith. Smith. Aiden McCourt also added an RBI for the Warriors. Hayden Jenkins had 9 strikeouts and overcame a 6-walk outing. He also gave up 4 hits and 5 runs, 2 earned in a 6-inning start. And then Riniger shut out the game in the final inning. Isaiah Frazier went the distance for Minerva, had to shoulder 10 hits and 11 runs, 2 earned as Minerva committed 6 errors. So that's really all we have there for baseball's side. On softball side, we had a number of great performances, including on Friday, Madison Kelly striking out 9 and hitting a home run for Canaan Valley over Tuscarawas Central Catholic. She also had a double and 2 RBIs. And then Strasburg was able to wrap up the IVC North with an 8-0 shutout against Newcomerstown over at Franklin Park. Strasburg is now 20-2 on the season, 11-0 in conference play. Amelia Spidell allowed 1 hit while striking out 9 for the Tigers. Haley Rigger and Olivia Spidell each went yard for Strasburg. Elle Gilgerson added a double and an RBI, while Spidell roped a triple. So the Tigers look like one of these top contenders in the state here in the next couple of weeks. We mentioned in our previous episode their current standing in the upcoming Eastern District postseason. So be sure to check that out. Softball, we also had Ridgewood beating Malvern in a mercy ruling 12-0 in 5 innings, as Ridgewood was able to really rack up a bunch of runs against the struggling Hornets. And so that's what we have for the scores. One story that I wanted to get to, Mitch, between the two of us was a very interesting announcement by the OHSAA this past later part of the week. With the upcoming football season a few months away, the OHSAA has officially announced new divisional and playoff region assignments for the 2023-24 school year. This is on Wednesday, actually. The upcoming year will see its first slate of Friday football games begin on August 18th. Featured a few changes in our area, mostly on my side. I don't know if there was any major changes on your end, but we do have them listed on BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find that latest blog post there. We had the usual suspects in divisions 7 and around 5, so to say, as Canaan Valley, Strasburg, and Tuscarawas Central Catholic remain there. But Malvern, after 1 year in Division 6 play, dropped back down to Division 7 in Region 25. Also, a team that dropped 1 division after being up 1 division for a year, Garaway. Garaway went up to Division 5 last year to compete with the likes of, your Ridgewoods and your Sandy Valleys as their IVC counterparts. But the Pirates are back in Division 6, Region 23, with Buckeye Trail, Newcomerstown, and Tusky Valley. You also have in Region 21, Canton Central Catholic, East Canton, and Tuslaw in Region 21. And then in 5, as I mentioned, Region 17, it's Coshocton, Fairless, Harrison Central, Ridgewood, and Sandy Valley. These are mainly the area schools for our respective parts. So you in Stark County, me in Tuscarawas County. Then Division 4, we had in Region 14, West Holmes. In Region 15, Cambridge, Carrollton, Claymont, Indian Valley, and Riverview. While in Region 13, Canton South, we just mentioned them, East Liverpool, Minerva, and West Branch. Now in Division 3, it's another big one because Dover for last year was in Division 2. Now they've come back down to match up with their rivals New Philadelphia in Region 9, along with Alliance, Louisville, and Marlington. In Division 2, Region 7, it is Greene, Hoover, Lake, Massillon Perry, and Massillon Washington. While in Division 1, Region 1, it's the usual suspects, McKinley Senior, Canton, obviously, Glen Oak, and Massillon Jackson. So that's not much change on your end, Mitch, but I mean, what do you make of some of these schools taking that trial run up a division over the last year and deciding, we're going to go back down?
I don't know if I take it so much as it's because they didn't have the success they wanted, but at the same time, Mitch, when you were already in this spot for so long and then you try to hop up, it doesn't work out. Maybe it was the hope of, hey, maybe we can hang with these schools that are above us in a division. And then maybe that's not the case. Also, we know enrollment plays a factor. I don't read too much into it because at the end of the day, I think if you're a good enough team, for the most of the part, it shouldn't matter what division you're in. Obviously, when you're in Division 1, you have more private schools that obviously have the luxury of recruiting. I mean, we often see it with a St. Ed's or St. Ignatius school from up here in the north, or Cincinnati Moeller down in Southern Ohio. Those schools typically are the big dogs that most teams would like to stay away from for obvious reasons. We've heard about the arguments whether private and public schools should be separated. And I'm sure that's a ongoing debate that'll last for a long time here. I have no issue with these schools dropping back down to where they'd been for a very long time, Mitch. I think it's probably the best move for their kids and the school's sake. And we'll have to see what happens, because at the same time, if there's a huge boom in enrollment, they might be right back up here in another 2 years. We'll have to wait and see. The one thing I did want to point out, though, with the little bit of realignment we had, is Massillon stays in Region 7, like you said, and Hoban stays in Region 5, meaning those two teams stay away from each other until a potential state semifinal matchup like we've seen last season and a few years before that. The other thing of note is we know Hoban and St. Vincent and St. Mary's put their rivalry in the regular season on hold. We had a story about that, about a couple months ago. Those two teams, though, are still in the same region for Division II, so they could very well still meet up in the playoffs now, much like they did last year in a game in which Hoban convincingly won over St. Vincent St. Mary. So that would be an interesting story to keep an eye on. Obviously, you can't just say we're not playing a team in the playoffs if you have any aspirations of going deep in the playoffs. But definitely an interesting storyline there if those two teams would be fortunate enough to meet up again after the rivalry was called off by both these schools. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. We're a long way away from football, but at the same time, Mitch, we're only a couple months away from high school football getting things going with 2 days in practice before I believe August 18th rolls around here and the season kicks off.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to St. V's in just a minute, but I do want to mention that East Canton actually moves up a division. They went up from Division 7 to 6 this year. I should have made myself clear on that. We also had 2 coaching hiring news this week. We'll also get to one later on, but Garaway has found a new girls head basketball coach in Brooks Numbers. Brooks is a longtime member of the boys basketball coaching staff over in Sugar Creek. Garaway put out an announcement on Facebook this past earlier part of the week. And then we also had Newcomerstown finding their new head coach and a Garaway graduate back from 2001 in Zeb Troyer. Zeb was hired as a Newcomerstown boys basketball coach at the Board of Education meeting on Thursday. Troyer coached the Newcomerstown girls varsity team this past season as the Lady Trojans went 3-19. Prior to him being at Newcomerstown, Troyer was at New Philadelphia for 2 seasons as the boys junior varsity basketball head coach after working within the Garaway's program in multiple positions from 2005 2020. Troyer will succeed former Trojans head coach Kevin Fondale. And before we go to break, Mitch, some very interesting news that broke just yesterday via Michael Bevan of the Akron Beacon Journal. This story regarding Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's parting ways with their baseball head coach, Bryce Fordyce, after 1 season. Very surprising news.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a full season that he was the head man at St. Vincent St. Mary's. It was actually after a win where he was dismissed as head coach, and we're still waiting on the actual details to be released here because we want to make sure we get those right when we're talking about a situation like this. But very shocking news for the Fighting Irish baseball program up there in Akron, a team that under Fordyce really went for a youthful approach to get these younger players some experience. I got to see them in their first game this season. Only, I believe, a few seniors on the roster, a couple juniors, a lot of freshmen and sophomore players on varsity that were very talented, but obviously pulling all those young kids up and taking their lumps was something that I think a lot of people expected potentially. But now we'll have to see where St. Vincent St. Mary's goes in terms of a baseball coach once the season concludes and see what other information comes out here that we can break down on next week's episode, hopefully, about why Bryce Fordyce was relieved of his duties here just really half of a season in.
Yeah, his final game was on Wednesday, in which the Irish beat Stowe 6-3, although they did lose 9-0 to Woodridge on Thursday night, as Don Coughlin and Lou Kolaski are now sharing duties as a team's head coach for the remainder of the season. All right, when we come back, we'll be going over more some of the professional sides of the sporting world, including the ongoing NBA playoffs. And should the Cavaliers be making a big move? Stay tuned right after this. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level low. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Vive Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
Hey, we welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla. Mitch, I mean, we've been going over these NBA playoffs despite the Cavaliers no longer being in the mix following their first round loss to the New York Knicks. That being said, we've been following the Knicks run this past couple of days as they match with the 8th-seeded Miami Heat. One of these teams will be in the conference finals by potentially next week's end, if not sooner. Depends on how the series goes. It's kind of fascinating to think about. How that being said, I mean, the series is tied at 1-1. Miami seemed to look to have the Knicks rattled at the end of game 1 as they were able to make a comeback in the third quarter, especially. And then the Knicks were able to make a statement victory by beating Miami 111-105 in game 2. So as the series now heads over to Miami, what do you think that the Heat really need to crack down on to ensure that, like the Knicks did to the Cavs in the first round series, that they won't have this game to affect them and they can run off the rest of the series?
If you're the Miami Heat, you just need to make sure Jimmy Butler's healthy. Mitch, I thought the Heat did a phenomenal job in game 2 without their best player, who really, Mitch, has been the best player in the playoffs so far in the games he's played in. You look to see what he did against Milwaukee in the first round in that, 5-game series win. over the Milwaukee Bucks, and then what he did in game 1 in New York. And then he didn't play in game 2. And I think a lot of people thought the Knicks were going to blow out the Heat, and the Heat really gave the Knicks a run for the money. It took a very heroic effort from Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle in that game to come away with a split at home. But now you go to Miami. There's been 3 days off since the last game has been played. They will take the court on Saturday. And Mitch, there's a few players we've seen before. When they get that look on their face, you're like, oh man, that is not good if you're the opposing team. And the camera caught Jimmy Butler after that game 2 loss at Madison Square Garden, smiling at the fans and waving at the New York Knicks fans. And sometimes you all but wonder if that just means we're okay. I'm going to be back. We're going home. We're going to defend home court. We're coming back here and trying to win this in 5, because with how he's played and how they played in game 1 when Butler was healthy up until the 4th when he got hurt, I don't know if there's any reason to really think that the Heat wouldn't win this series. And the Knicks certainly aren't playing the same way they did against the Cavs. Part of that is because Miami just plays tough all the time, and they're not getting bullied around in the paint like the Cavs did. But it's going to take all hands on deck for the Heat, or for the Knicks, excuse me, if they're going to go to Miami and earn a split to really make this a best of 3 in games 5, 6, and 7. It'll be interesting. I think Brunson is more than capable of handling a heavy load on his shoulders. We'll see if Randle can, because we know the Cavs kept him quiet. That was really Randle's first great performance in the playoffs so far in game 2.
Yeah.
Can he duplicate it again? We'll have to wait and see. But if Butler is healthy, Mitch, I don't know if this goes past 5. And if it does, I think it maybe goes 6 with the Heat winning. I don't know what the Knicks can do. And I don't really just put that on Jimmy Butler. I put it on Erik Spoelstra. Mitch, we talk about coaches, and we're going to talk about coaches here in the NBA later in the show. Erik Spoelstra, though, Mitch, might be one of the best coaches in the NBA, and maybe still doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Sure.
Popovich is one of the all-time greats. The Spurs are tanking like a number of other teams because they want this can't-miss prospect in Victor Wembanyama. I don't blame them. But what Erik Spoelstra has been able to do before the Big Three united in Miami in the 2011 season, and then after LeBron left Miami to come back to Cleveland, and then upon the departure of Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh retiring, the Heat have been a constant mainstay in the East as a team that you don't want to play. And this is a team that was in the finals in the bubble in 2020. This is a team that took the Celtics to game 7 last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. And really, I think we were just disappointed by how they played all season, because it was like, man, this team isn't that good, right? They barely got in. They lost their first playing game to the Hawks. It was like, can they actually get in the playoffs? And now here they are. And I think they're, with how they played right now, even without Jimmy Butler, they look like the best team in the East after what we've seen between Boston and Philly. And I think Erik Spoelstra deserves a ton of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this whole list of coaches right now. I mean, there aren't many. There are even some NBA champion head coaches in this league. I would take Erik Spoelstra over. I mean, we could even play this game right now. I mean, I'll tell you this. I'm going to list a coach's name, and you tell me if you would take if you would take them over Erik Spoelstra. Just say yes or no. Quinn Snyder for Atlanta.
No.
Joe Mazzulla for Boston.
No.
Jacques Vaughn for Brooklyn.
No.
Steve Clifford for Charlotte.
No.
All right, we're gonna list a couple. We're gonna skip a couple of these. Just gonna skip one for a reason. Michael Malone for Denver.
No.
Okay. Steve Kerr for Golden State.
That's I would say yes, but I also think the way those teams are made up, I think that definitely plays a factor. I think Steve Kerr is a very good coach, but I think those two are in the top 3 in the NBA.
Rick Carlisle for Indiana.
No.
Okay, he has a championship. Ty Lue for the Clippers.
No.
Okay. What we got here? Doc Rivers.
No.
Tom Thibodeau.
No.
Monty Williams.
Nope.
Mike Brown.
No.
Greg Popovich. We can probably put that there too. And then, I'm looking at the other names. Wes Unseld Jr., Darwin Ham, Jason Kidd, Billy Donovan. It's like those two right now are like the only ones I would probably take over Spoelstra in terms of veteran coaching tenure and his success.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
I mentioned that stat before the playoffs. He had like 126 playoff games compared to Bickerstaff's 5 if the Cavs and Heat would have ever matched up in that first round. Just goes to show he's got the experience and he's got the hardwood or the stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned the tenure because I don't have it in front of me, but I believe Spoelstra, Popovich, and Kerr, not in that order, are the 3 longest tenured coaches in the NBA right now. And that would be for good reason. They're probably the only 3 coaches that have yet to be fired by that team that they've won a championship with. And so those 3 right now are the top coaches in the NBA. And I think where they're at with the organization definitely plays a factor. Like Kerr, I don't know if you could take Spoelstra and put him in Golden State and have the same success Kerr has had. And same with Kerr in Miami. But all 3 of those coaches, Mitch, I think are the top 3 in the NBA at the moment.
Those 3 you mentioned. Mike Malone started in 2015, and the next longest tenured head coach was Monty Williams in May of 2019. Why are there so many coaching? This is 2020 was a weird year for coaches. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so we'll go back to the playoff races right now. The other matchup in the East between Boston and Philadelphia is very captivating because who would have thought, Mitch, that Philadelphia, sans Joel Embiid in game 1, would have had any chance against the Celtics? They're able to win that game. However, in game 2, with Joel back on the court, Boston just ran him out of the Garden, just ran him out like they were nothing. And now they go back to Philly in what I think, Mitch, is going to be the series that determines who will represent the East in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think you're very safe in assuming that. I think the other part of that is you have to see what happens with the Heat and Knicks and how healthy Jimmy Butler is off the injury. But Mitch, nobody, even Sixers fans that I know or fans of players in the Sixers, expected them to win game 1. Not even the sports books, because the lines were outrageous. The Celtics were double-digit point favorites for a reason. But Mitch, the Celtics have done this before. They did it in game 5 against the Hawks. They could have closed out the Hawks in 5. And they let a team come in that was missing their second best player and win in the Garden. And so I don't know. I didn't understand why Joel Embiid played game 2 because he's not 100%. But at the same time, I understood it because he has to knock off the rust. There is going to be a rust factor no matter what. So I didn't have a problem with that. I think the series in Philadelphia is going to be insane. Joel Embiid was announced the NBA MVP, finally getting the recognition he thinks he deserves. And I think that he ultimately deserves. Obviously he was runner up the past 2 years to Jokic and made it a point to want to get it this year, but he'll get that trophy before game 3 on Saturday night. And I am very intrigued to see what the Sixers do, because you had him out there, but you also had your other star player, Mitch, who lit up the Celtics in game 1, revert back to his old usual self like another player in the NBA does every other game in James Harden. It was a horrendous performance from Harden, who was 0-9 from 3, I believe 4-12 from the floor shooting. Just a horrific game for him. And there's the people out there, the Sixers are better without Joel Embiid. That is a load of crap. Let me tell you that right now. It's not like he's a role player that catches fire. He is the most valuable player in the NBA this year for good reason. I mean, when he missed some time in years past, how bad were the Sixers? They were a team you really didn't take seriously. I think this is going to go the distance in 7. I really do. I think these 2 teams are evenly matched. I would expect Philadelphia to come out and win game 3 because that atmosphere inside the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia is going to be crazy after Embiid gets his trophy. I would expect Embiid to have a monster game, or at least have the attempt to have a monster game in terms of shot attempts and where he's at on the floor for rebounding. But Mitch, it says something that the Sixers won without Embiid, but it also says something that the Celtics blew out the Sixers and Jason Tatum had 7 points. I don't know which game you want to look at more and take more from, or if you just call it a wash and that it's 1-1 and now it's a best of 5 here as we enter game 3. But I really have no feeling on how this series could end. I just personally think it's going to go 7.
Yeah, I don't think that it depends, because I don't know if Marcus Smart's going to have as solid an offensive outing in game 3. I don't know if Derek White's going to have as solid an outing in game 3. And then both of them only combined for 30 points. So it's not like they were balling out. And then Malcolm Brogdon was the only one doing anything for Boston on the bench in that one. So they were able to spread out the scoring, unlike Philadelphia was able to do through its bench. And the starters spread out the scoring, but it wasn't as fruitful as Boston's was. So I'd like to see the series go 7. Who's going to win? I don't know. One team that I definitely think is going to win at this point is, and look, things can change here the next couple. Maybe Phoenix can rack off a couple of wins, but Denver just looks like they are dominating a Suns squad that you would think would put up some sort of fight in this one, but it just hasn't been the case. And I think Denver might be looking at a potential quick and easy series here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think a big part of that is the fact that Chris Paul has already been ruled out of game 3, Mitch.
Yeah.
And listen, it's unfortunate because I do think Chris Paul is one of the best point guards we've seen in our lifetime. And we know he does not have the postseason success. He's only ever made it to 1 finals, and they blew the 2-0 lead to Milwaukee. This team, though, without a point guard, now having to have potentially Devin Booker run the point. And we saw what he did in game 1, even though Denver, beat Phoenix, having 30 plus points, then going for another 30 ball in game 2. But Mitch, we talked about it when the NBA season started. The Suns were prepared to let DeAndre Ayton walk. They matched the offer that he got from, I believe, the Pacers, and he's back. And he has been getting bullied by the Joker. And Nikola Jokic, Mitch, and this is no disrespect to Joel Embiid. Nikola Jokic, though, looks like the best player in the NBA at this very moment after his game 1 and 2 performance against Phoenix. He is doing whatever he wants. And this is exactly what I wanted to see from Denver, because a few months ago we talked about, could this be the Denver team we've seen the past couple of years where they win a series and they get knocked out because they just can never find something? And that is not the case. This team looks like a well-oiled machine with Mike Malone leading the charge. Jamal Murray didn't even have a good game 2, and they still were able to come back and beat Phoenix after Booker went off, and KD really didn't have a good game. But now all the pressure is on the Suns because the Nuggets did what they had to do. They defended home court. And right now, the way you won those first 2 games, I don't think Phoenix can have any confidence going back to Denver and trying to win in Denver in a potential game 5 that's win or go home, or a potential game 7 if Phoenix should rattle off the wins and defend their home court. But this is a completely different Denver Nuggets team than we've seen the past couple of years. I think it's safe to say that.
Yeah, that Jokic-Ayton matchup right now is very reminiscent of the likes of Olajuwon versus Robinson in 95. Well, granted, Ayton wasn't winning the MVP right before that, like Robinson did against Hakeem. That being said, Jokic has been very dominant so far this season. I mean, Booker has been averaging 35 points these playoffs, had 35 the other night. So the guy can still get you your points. It's just that the Suns just haven't looked efficient offensively, especially in the last quarter of the last game. 14 points to Denver's 27. You could have easily put that game away if your offense showed up in the final period. Now, one team that really needed its offense last night to show up and didn't, more so the defense didn't, was the LA Lakers, who ended up losing to the Golden State Warriors 127-100. And now that series is tied going back to LA. This one's interesting because I still think that LA, despite the performance they put on in game 2, and granted, Klay Thompson had a heck of a performance after really struggling in game 1, I still think the Lakers have momentum in the series to win at least one of the next 2 on their home floor. You just can't give up back-to-back. That's the worst possible scenario because Golden State's not going to give up 1 out of the potential 3 with 2 of them being on their home floor, despite what happened, 7 years ago at this point. Good God. It's not happening, if that's the case.
No, and I would consider game 3 a must win for the Lakers. Look, the Lakers have done their job in making sure Steph Curry doesn't get going. Mitch, last night in a game 2 win, Steph Curry had 20, was 7-12, but only took 5 3-point attempts. Vanderbilt has done a phenomenal job of guarding Curry through the first 2 matchups. He really frustrated him in game 1, but last night Curry said, that's okay. I have other teammates. I'm going to pass the ball. He had 12 assists. And that's what a player of Curry's caliber can do. And I get, you don't want to let the best player beat you, but he is so good. He can beat you in a variety of other ways. And he showed that last night. Klay Thompson, after Mitch, a couple really bad games, game 7 against the Kings, game 1 against the Lakers, really showed up last night. 11 of 18, 8 of 11 from 3. You got some big time contributions from players on the bench, or really JaMychal Green being inserted into that starting role as the Lakers, Mitch, after dominating game one, the best player in game one that was on the floor at any point did what we are so used to seeing. And it's so frustrating because Anthony Davis in game one, Mitch, was unstoppable.
Yep.
Unstoppable. The Warriors had no way to even counterbalance that attack that Anthony Davis had. And then last night he goes 5 of 11 for 11 points and 7 rebounds. And we've seen it before. And unfortunately, we've seen it with James Harden. These are two great players, Mitch, but the consistency from them is mind-boggling. And it's so frustrating. And LeBron James had a terrific first half. He had 21 points at halftime. He was hitting threes. I believe he was 2 of 2 to start and then 3 of 4 at the half. And this is a guy that had the worst 3-point percentage shooting the playoffs so far among qualified attempts. And he said, all right, I'll take us to halftime. We'll get help. And the help never came. And hopefully Davis bounces back, because I think anybody that likes basketball, Mitch, is really enjoying this series, because on one hand, we're seeing 2 of the all-time greats go at it in LeBron and Steph Curry. Not sure how much we'll get to see that, if we'll get to see it again in the playoffs. Obviously, both, well, you can't really say it, but in terms of father time, both nearing the ends of their career. At the same time, it's just good basketball. It really is. And that blowout last night, yeah, it wasn't great, but at the same time, the first half, it was a lot of fun to watch. And this series strictly depends on Anthony Davis. And we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, he only played 33 minutes last night because the game was decided, so he got a little bit of rest. Unlike game one, where he sat 4 total minutes, he played 44 of the 48 minutes in game one. The Lakers will go as far as Anthony Davis can take them, because we know LeBron can still do what LeBron does. But when Rui Hachimura is your second leading scorer, your odds are you're not going to be able to go very far.
No, that's not going to be the case for LA in all likelihood. So when we come back, we'll be going over some big news that happened in the NBA just yesterday, and we will go over it. We'll go over a potential scenario involving this person in the news. We'll be back right after these messages.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products, or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register, or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air, and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information, or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Employee benefits, although time-consuming and expensive, is one of the top considerations for those making a job change. At Hummel Group, we help businesses craft benefit strategies that align with company goals. Through an emphasis on cost containment, leveraging technology, and benefits administration, we save your team valuable time. Your employees call us with questions, not you. Visit HummelHelps.com or call 800-860-1060. Don't just get insurance. Get Hummel.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch, you're going to be going over now the story that broke prior to Thursday night's slate of NBA games, was just the one between the Lakers and the Warriors, was that the Milwaukee Bucks are officially parting ways with head coach Mike Budenholzer after 5 seasons between the two, one of them being that 2021 championship season that seemed to bring some sort of new gravitas to Giannis Antetokounmpo's NBA career, got Milwaukee its first title in 50 years. But now Budenholzer is out of work. He has a very complicated legacy, I think, because if you'd asked any NBA fan outside of Milwaukee and maybe even inside of Milwaukee, if prior to the 2021 year, if Budenholzer would ever lead the Bucks to an NBA championship, I think the response would have been hell no, because there were just so many. There were so many factors that people, I think, were taking into account. His time, his missed opportunities with the Hawks, some of the missed opportunities early on with Milwaukee with Giannis. But when you get that championship, you are one of the, I didn't get the number here before I got it. I listed it off here. One of the very few NBA coaches who have won a championship in the NBA compared to the hundreds of coaches we've had over the last few decades. So when you have this sort of turnaround right after losing in the year after you win the championship in the conference semifinals, then you lose in the first round as a 1 seed to Miami, like we just saw last week. How do you think Budenholzer will be analyzed within time? Because I want to give him his credit. The guy overcame one of the greatest challenges, the NBA postseason, and got what he needed to get, that trophy. But I don't know if anybody will look back and say, oh, think about all the great coaches who led their teams to championship. You know, you got Phil Jackson, you got Steve Kerr, you got Red Auerbach, you got Pat Riley. Oh, and then you got Mike Budenholzer. Man, that guy was a leader, and I just can't see it.
He was a good coach. He is not a coach that I would ever put in the same room or even remotely close to the same building as the other names you just mentioned. Mitch, he was fired from Atlanta for a reason. In Atlanta, in 2015, he was swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm.
In 2016, he was swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers. In 2019, he lost 4 straight to Toronto in 6 games, meaning they had a 2-0 lead. Then Milwaukee, he lost 3 straight to Miami in 5 in the bubble in 2020. And then this year he lost 3 straight to Miami in 5 games as the number 1 overall seed in the East, also blowing double-digit point leads in game 4 and 5, and also sitting on a timeout in both games that could have potentially helped the Bucks advance the ball and drop the play. It seems that he is not the best decision maker. It also seems that his team has the ability to maybe jump out to a lead in terms of either the actual game they're playing or in terms of a series lead, and then not end things. In 2021, Giannis was incredible, and he still is one of the best, if not the best, active player in the NBA from top to bottom. When we talk about all sports and how teams win championships, Mitch, the one thing we always said about the Golden State Warriors, they were really good. They were really good. I'm not taking that away from them. But did they get a little luck along the way? They certainly did, right? Kyrie and Kevin Love not being there in 15. Kawhi Leonard getting hurt in 16. 2018. 2019 2016 was Chris Paul and the Rockets. Chris Paul getting hurt. 2017 was Kawhi Leonard getting hurt. Hence the whole new closeout rule and the 3-point shot that we now see in the NBA called so often. When the Bucks won it, there was a plethora of injuries that went their way for the opposing teams they played. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Milwaukee, but that's just how it is when teams can win championships, whether it's the Super Bowl, the Stanley Cup, the World Series, or the NBA Finals. The Bucks got a couple breaks, and the Bucks also had Giannis, who in that playoff series match, I think cemented himself as the top player in the NBA at the time. They also caught a break with Kevin Durant having a shoe size an inch too big. And that's the type of things that you have to have. And there's nothing wrong in saying that. I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that. But Budenholzer just is a good coach. There's nothing special about him, in my opinion. If there was, certainly I think the Hawks would have put up more of a fight when he was there. In Atlanta, he was, 213 to 197. And then in Milwaukee for 5 seasons, he was 271 and 120. So obviously very, very improved in Milwaukee as the head coach. But when you have Giannis there, that definitely plays a factor. But I'm not shocked because realistically, Mitch, his coaching decisions in this series ultimately cost them a chance to make it a series in the first round against the Heat rather than going out in 5. And one of them was Giannis Antetokounmpo saying he wishes he could have guarded Jimmy Butler more, yet he just trusted Budenholzer there. He probably should have spoke up, he said. And so maybe Budenholzer needs to realize, hey, I do have a Greek freak that can defend almost any position in the NBA. And one guy is absolutely torching us whenever he wants, and he never made an adjustment. And then he sat on 2 timeouts, which hopefully the Milwaukee Bucks can roll those over into next year because, saving those timeouts, those carry over to next season, right, Mitch?
I've got some more numbers here. Mike Budenholzer, I believe 6 times had his teams finish as the top seed in the respective conference in the East, Atlanta and Milwaukee combined. Was it 4 times in his career? His teams have won 55 games or more, with 2 of them finishing in 60-win seasons. And I think that's the disconnect. Because when you have all these great runs of regular season success and it's only resulting in 1 championship, that's when it gets disappointing. And I think I heard someone mention on the air the other day, that championship did raise expectations for Milwaukee, especially as you're able to bring so much of that core back together, that when you lose in the conference semifinals to Boston the year after, fine. You caught a team at the hottest time. But then give credit to Miami, but you're losing in the first round in 5 games. It wasn't even like a even matchup. And you could say Giannis's injury was affecting him. And there's some people that brought up, some people were bringing up that the Bucks may not have made the right decision. Not just because, they may have wanted to keep Budenholzer, but there was the factor of Budenholzer losing his brother. What was it? Just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks before his parting ways. So that's a thing for the Milwaukee front office to decide, and the front office only. I'm sure it had zero impact on their decision regardless, but I don't know. I think it was maybe them deciding, look, if we can get another guy in here, a guy who can maybe be a little sharper with playmaking decisions, a guy who can still bring the level of intellect that Budenholzer was able to have to get his teams to play so well, mainly during the regular season and even into some playoff runs, then you can still have that level of success with arguably the top player in the NBA. I mean, I don't really know who you go for at this point though, Mitch, because you already Houston already snapped up Ime Udoka. So at this rate, I mean, anything could happen throughout the rest of the offseason. Maybe other coaches are going to be let go, but I'm wondering if it's going to be someone maybe from originally Budenholzer's original staff. Maybe it's somebody from outside. I'm not really sure who could take over at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing when you fire a coach and bring somebody else in. Who are you going to replace him with that is significantly going to be better, or at least change things up that Budenholzer wasn't good at? I'm kind of tired of seeing these same coaches in the NBA get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And I'm saying that because you have Nick Nurse out there who was in Toronto. You have Frank Vogel who was fired from the Lakers. And it's almost like, is it really going to be one of those guys who have had a couple different tenures now? Vogel, is who I'm really speaking about with Indiana and then Orlando and then the Lakers, and he's fired from all three. Or Mitch, do they get innovative and maybe go for a new young mind, maybe one of the top assistants on a coaching staff in the NBA for these other teams? I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Obviously, I think if they could have done it over, maybe, if you could see this was coming, maybe they go after Ime Udoka, who I wouldn't consider a guy that's getting opportunity. He's getting a new opportunity because of something,
right?
Can't really say out of his control because he could have prevented it. But at the same time, it's not like he was fired because of performance related issues with the Celtics. He was fired because of a violation of expectations and rules for an organization. To me, that's different than Nick Nurse getting let go from Toronto for not being good this year. I don't know where they go. It's going to be very interesting, but I do know that there's a lot of talk about our team and maybe a new head coach. And a lot of people want our coach out of here. There is no way I would want Mike Budenholzer in Cleveland. No shot I would take him in Cleveland as our head coach.
Yeah, this talk has been brewing up ever since the firing, but especially after the Cavaliers dropped the 5 games to the Knicks in the first round. I think people really got bitter about the way this Cavaliers season, which seemed to be on the right track, ended. And I'm not quick to want to discard certain figures from the team at this point. There are people that I think want this Cavaliers team to become more hardened, because that was a soft performance that they put in the series, no doubt. Getting offense, getting out rebounded, getting out physical by not even the greatest physical players in the NBA. Cavaliers have a choice. I think they're going to make the choice to keep Bickerstaff at least for this next coming season, but I think there's going to have to be some better results that are going to have to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to be stagnating with Donovan Mitchell's contracts continuing to expire, with other guys still needing to potentially get their pay here in the next couple of years, the likes of Evan Mobley and such. And I don't know. I wouldn't want Budenholzer to. I don't want the Cavaliers to make a reactionary decision to fire Bickerstaff and pursue any coach in the league, much less Budenholzer.
Unless Phil Jackson's coming out of retirement or Red Auerbach's coming back to life or something like that. Like, no. What does Mike Budenholzer do significantly better than JB Bickerstaff? The answer is nothing. Yes, he has a championship, but look how many times he was in the playoffs, Mitch. This was Bickerstaff's first time, along with every other player on the roster of the Cavs outside of Donovan Mitchell and Ricky Rubio, I believe. And Jared Allen, excuse me.
Yes.
So it was a learning curve for everybody. Am I upset the Cavs got eliminated? Yes. Am I upset because they got eliminated in 5 and pretty much embarrassed in 4 of those 5 games? Yeah, I am. But there is a learning curve to this. You don't just magically hop into the playoffs and just make these runs unless you have a significant player of value like we saw LeBron do. But even when that happened, you traded for Kevin Love. You had Kyrie Irving, who had already kind of shown you he was a budding superstar. Just give it another year. Okay. Yes, listen, I can be fire coach guy. I don't know how many times I've had to say I want to fire the football coach in Cleveland. But at the same time, there's a very good history of teams in the NBA that make the playoffs for the first time and they don't perform well. There's history of teams that do, and that's fair. But the Knicks team that beat us, Mitch, they did the same thing we did just 2 years ago. They got into the playoffs and the lights were too bright. The Hawks went in there and took it to them with Trae Young the year the Hawks made it to the conference finals. Now, hopefully we don't have a down year next year, or else Bickerstaff will be gone. I think it's safe to say that, but there is a learning curve. And at first, without Donovan Mitchell, we said this team has to make the playoffs. They did it. Obviously, with Mitchell coming here, we raised the floor. He didn't play all that well either, though, Mitch.
No.
And so that learning experience for the entire Cavaliers team is there now, and they now know what to expect moving forward. And I think unless Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, or Eric Spoelstra get fired, or we can trade for them, there's nobody right now that I think is significantly head and shoulders above JB Bickerstaff that I would dismiss him and go get. Just run it back next year. Let Kobe Altman actually make some moves to give him a bench so we can figure out his rotation, and let the guys who thought the lights were too bright get another year under their belt, and let's see what we can do next year. But if we're having the same conversation in 11 months from now, Mitch, it means we're going to be looking for a new head coach.
If you think the Cavaliers should make a move this season, particularly for maybe even former Bucks head coach Mike Budenholzer, let us know in the comments below or hit us up on Spotify. So when we come back, we'll go over some baseball talk here as we wrap up the rest of the show. We'll be right back right after these messages. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef.
No!
Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
Turning 65 soon or already on Medicare? Hummel Group can help you explore your options and find a plan that fits your unique healthcare needs and budget. Our experienced agents provide personalized advice and help you compare plans from top insurance carriers for free. We're here to help you find the Medicare plan that's right for you. Visit HummelHelps.com or call 800-860 1060 to speak to an agent about Medicare. Don't just get insurance, get Hummel.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla. Mitch, before we get to our Major League Baseball talk, we had some news that broke this week. It broke last night, yesterday. It was Alabama parting ways with their baseball head coach, Brad Bohannon, following a link to suspicious bets that were made for an Alabama LSU game that happened about a week ago. First of all, Mitch, before we go into that story, I had this conversation with somebody else. Doesn't this look like the kind of man that allegedly conspired with a bettor to make a particular move on a tied Tigers game just a week ago?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it.
So these are some of the details according to ESPN's David Purdom. The alleged suspicious activity took place Friday at the sports book at the Great American Ballpark in Ohio, according to the Ohio Casino Control Commission. Alabama's scheduled starting. This is the detail for me that I'm like, okay. Yes. Alabama's scheduled starting pitcher, ace Luke Holman, was scratched before the LSU game because of back tightness and was replaced by sophomore Hagan Banks, who hadn't started a game since March 16th. LSU went on to win the game 8-6. The other detail was sportsbook surveillance video indicated that the person who placed the bets was communicating with Bohannon at the time. Multiple sources with direct info about the investigation told ESPN. Again, innocent until proven guilty. But there are some details where I'm like, okay, there may have been a reason that Alabama pulled the trigger and decided, you know what, we need to cut ties.
I mean, the first part of what you just said, Mitch, is a giant red flag. You're playing against the top baseball team in the country in college baseball and the LSU Tigers, a mainstay atop the polls in college baseball year in and year out. And you scratch your ace because of sudden back tightness right before the game. Mitch, typically what you would see there is, because these guys that are in line for a rotation, much like Major League Baseball, they are typically not throwing in a midweek game that most colleges play. They would have just thrown last weekend in whatever series they were involved in. So typically you might see the number 2 starter get moved to the first game, the number 3 starter getting moved to the second game. To scratch your ace and then throw somebody who had not pitched since March 16th is a giant red flag. And I get it. Listen, sometimes I coach baseball. Sometimes you have no other options. I get it. But then for there to be surveillance with somebody depositing, and Mitch, I have an article pulled up here on AL.com, which is the Alabama paper. It was considered a large bet. Now, large, a lot of people consider that, well, what is large? So now, to give that context, to simply put, an industry insider told AL.com that is not unusual to see a 6-figure bet on NFL and major college football games, right? So 6 figures is considered large. However, in comparison, a $5,000 bet or more in a college baseball game would be considered large and raises red flags. Now, you take the info we have of the pitcher being scratched, the surveillance of a bettor in Ohio and Cincinnati at Great American Ballpark, who is on the phone, which why you would even have him saved under your name if you're doing something that is specifically in the rules is beyond me. On the phone with the Alabama head coach the same time this is going on, and then you're placing a $5,000 plus wager on the LSU Tigers to win. There is something going on there. And there was a lot of confusion of why those games were taken off the books here in Ohio, Mitch.
Yes.
They were taken off the books. I was unaware, not betting on college baseball. And I started to see about it and hear about it like, oh, Alabama, they're being investigated. Well, then Pennsylvania and New Jersey followed suit. They took off college baseball games down in the South. For them to fire their coach, Mitch, means they probably have more evidence than they needed. To me, you look at some other issues, and yes, they're not gambling issues, but let's just talk about other issues that we've seen before, whether it is crime-related issues or academic-related issues. Typically, it's an investigation that is launched. I mean, Mitch, we're talking about Alabama, who we just had a situation this past college basketball season with a crime committed with one of their players. and they launched an investigation. He was still able to play. So for this to be happening and for them to dismiss a coach in less than 72 hours, in my opinion, it means they have some concrete evidence against him. And it means that it's pretty clear that he was betting against his own team, which to me is absolutely absurd. And it's really sickening to know that these kids who this coach recruited to come down there and play for him, he was not putting them in the best situation to win. And at times he was even saying, all right, I'm going to do something to help the other team win so I can make more money tonight. And that's sad because you're ultimately playing with kids' careers. And I don't know how many players Alabama is going to have get looks from MLB scouts, but we know LSU typically has top players drafted in the draft. So that means typically there's scouts watching LSU play. And if you're a baseball player, you know, all it takes is one good game for you to have in front of a scout that's there looking at somebody else. And so now these Alabama kids, unfortunately, are affected by it too. And that's my biggest issue. You knew the rules. Why'd you do it? Two, the guy you had doing it for you, how dumb could you possibly be to have your name still saved as the contact if you're going to do something like this? And three, you're affecting an entire university and a bunch of young men's baseball careers potentially. And who knows, Mitch, maybe this happened more than just this instance this season under Bohannon. It's something that I'm actually very intrigued to see the more facts that come out here, and also hopefully the surveillance of how they were able to catch this at the sports book at Great America Ballpark in Cincinnati.
Yeah, the bets have also stopped in New Jersey as well. So if you're making a day trip over there, I wouldn't imagine you going to the books and placing a wager down there, because it won't happen. All right, so we'll wrap up the show with some brief Guardians talk, because the team right now is just kind of eh. I think I might have said the last show, but I'll say it this show. They're kind of just eh. We're hovering around 500 in a division that's, aside from Minnesota, not doing great right now. Pitching has been modest. I think a lot of the young arms coming up have been modest. Peyton Battenfield, Logan Allen, Tanner Bybee. Even though he just lost 2 of 3 to the Yankees, who are struggling in their own right in a better AL East, nonetheless. And now you have Zach Plesac getting moved down to AAA to make way for Battenfield to start off the first of 3 games against Minnesota on Friday. And I was not going to panic when the Guardians finished the month of April the way they did. I think you had to get to the end. A lot of fans are saying get to the end of May, then we'll make a reactionary or a rational analyzing of the team. I think though, Mitch, and I know we're only 5 days into May, this Twin series is really going to, for me, gauge where the team can be at competitively in the Central, because it's really all you need to get into the postseason.
Mitch, their pitching has allowed the 6th fewest runs in the American League and just 10th fewest in all of baseball. The offense has been dreadful. And it's very bizarre because at first, with how the month of April went, we got off to a great start. I think it caught you and I by surprise, and probably a lot of the listeners and viewers out there, because typically a Tito-led team in April is not good. And then they fell. And they didn't just fall. I mean, they plummeted. And you thought, okay, well, but look at the record. It's almost the same exact spot it was last year. Yeah, Jose's numbers are down a little bit, but he'll get going. But you go to New York and they're without their most fearful bats in Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. They're reeling. I mean, the Yankees just beat you the last 2 games of that series and they won 2 in a row. Before that, well, now in their last 10 with those 2 wins, they're 4-6, Mitch. It's not like the Yankees were these world beaters. After they came to Cleveland, they fell off. They could not do anything right besides starting Garrett Cole once every 5 games. That was the only thing they could do right. I don't know what it is. I don't want to push the panic button yet. But this series against Minnesota is huge because the Twins are 3.5 in front of you. I'm not calling for a sweep. I'm saying I need to see you get 2 or 3 because, Mitch, you're only a half game in front of the Tigers. And people go, oh, it's the Tigers. They're not good. Yeah, you know, they're 13-17. They're not that good. I challenge all the viewers and listeners out there to go look at the Tigers' record versus teams outside of the American League East, because the Tigers are above 500 when they play teams outside the American League East. They just swept the New York Mets. they've beaten some good teams. The American League East, though, Mitch, is a juggernaut of a division. The team in last place is 17-15. That would be a half game back of the Minnesota Twins in the AL Central. It's mind-boggling. This offense is horrendous. And it's getting to a point now where I get this team did a lot last year, and that was great. And we're probably never going to forget that 22 season for how magical it was. But this is a business. And if guys can't do their job, they got to get moved. Ahmed Rosario is one of them, who has been downright atrocious so far this season. Oscar Gonzalez cannot figure it out. And that was my biggest concern if you watched or listened to us leading up to the start of the baseball season. Jose's still fine. He's still hitting almost 290, right? The power numbers aren't there.
Yeah.
Josh Bell kind of getting going a little bit. Josh Naylor, another one. You're going off last year's success. He is not a cleanup hitter. The goal was to get a cleanup hitter in here to put between Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor. And Bell got off to an awful start. But Mitch, if this offense keeps going this way, this team is not going to have a chance, because not only that, they wasted another great Shane Bieber performance the other night. Now, he gave up 2 home runs, one to Willie Calhoun, who actually has really good numbers against Bieber when you looked at it, and the other to Jake Bowers, who I don't know when he played against Bieber, but he didn't have bad numbers either when I was looking at the pregame matchup. But you could only score 2 runs off a guy who was barely getting out of the 3rd inning in his last few starts for the New York Yankees. It doesn't make sense. It looks like they're pressing. They're not playing the style of baseball we saw last year, which, Mitch, you thought it would be better this year because the shift is gone. And we saw how many guys ground out last year and put the ball in play that fell victim to the shift. And now we're not even putting balls in play that we saw last year. And it's worrisome. Not panicking yet, but I don't know how much longer we can go until we have to hit the panic button. I would say the silver lining is May 28th or 29th is what it seems like for Tristan McKenzie to come back. And I think your rotation might be solidified at that point with Shane Bieber, McKenzie if he stays healthy, and Mitch. These young kids in Logan Allen and Tanner Bybee, I'm saying those 2 first. I think they deserve every opportunity to stay up here right now, because Plesac has not performed well. Savale was He's hurt though. Cal Quantrill, I think, is a good 5 starter, but then the decision is it Cal or is it Peyton Battenfield? Because I think Battenfield's done a very nice job as well. But
sure. I think real quick, I think it'll be Quantrill, obviously, once they get everything settled, because Battenfield will go to the bullpen or get sent down.
I agree 100%. But this team, maybe we see the youth influx this year on the mound rather than in the field in the lineup like we saw last year. And I have no problem with that. With how Allen and Bybee have pitched, would you have a problem with that?
No.
They've been great. So the offense is just bad. 116 runs scored, they're negative 19 run differential so far here in the baseball season.
I mean, even your best overall hitter, the power is what gets me, because even your best overall hitter in Ramirez right now, 3 home runs in 31 games. And I understand pace means nothing in baseball where you can get really hot and really cold. But him, Bell, and Naylor, who lead the team with 3 home runs right now, they're all on pace for 16 home runs this season. And I'm rounding up from 15.6. That's unless I did the math wrong, that's not the greatest.
Oh,
this is not a murderer's row, so to say.
No, there's besides Jose, and listen, another reason his numbers are down, Mitch, he's gotten intentionally walked a lot because the guys behind him have not been able to produce. But nobody else is producing. And so it's hard. And the one thing I always loved about Jose, but he would fall victim to in the past few years, is there would be times you could tell he was trying to shoulder most of the workload and say, all right, I'm up. I got to hit this out. I got to drive in runs, and I don't want to see that from him, but I'm not going to be able to blame him if we start to see that here soon. Something needs to change. And maybe it's a move of Josh Naylor, or maybe the move was Plesac getting sent down. Maybe that was a move to these other guys who were up here for a few years saying, hey, you know what? You're not performing well. You are expendable. We have great prospects in the minors. We will call them up. You better figure it out. And this 3-game set against the Twins, and I think the Tigers right afterwards, is going to be very telling for what the Guardians are going to be in 2023.
Yeah, especially for Plesac, where he's only had 1 start out of 5 this year where he's gone beyond 5 innings. And that was a 7-inning outing back on April 9th against Seattle. And that was almost a month ago. So yeah, I think he just needs a little bit of time to recover and maybe let these younger guns take over for a bit. And then if he needs to be called back up, call him back up. But yeah, I'm keeping an eye on this weekend series, like I am for pretty much all the games, but especially with Minnesota right now being in first. You know, that they look like a objectively better team right now. How much better we'll find out here in the next couple of days. And we will see you guys here in the next couple of days on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Mitch, what is our fact of the day before we sign off here?
Well, I don't have my fun fact notebook in front of me, but your fact of the day is you can watch the Massillon Tigers and Jackson Polar Bears tonight live on BigTimeSportsOhio.com or the LBN app, a 5 p.m. first pitch in a little backyard rivalry between Jackson and Massillon. Should be a good one. Both teams very, very talented this year, and both, I would assume, Mitch, when we talk next week, have a higher seed in the tournament draw.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to cheat here because I had one that I wanted to get before the show ended. 3 out of the last 4 NBA championship winning head coaches are no longer with their teams. Think about that. That is all we have here. Thank you for listening or watching to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.